Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. So this video will not only be going over the changes, but also the opener and core rotation of the monk right now as of patch 5.4, so strap on in for this kind of wonky guide video. So monk got a huge rework in patch 5.4, which might still be an understatement, with core parts of their base rotation and fundamental mechanics completely reworked. Now I've finally gotten my hands on it in-game and had a bit of time to do some testing, as well as consulted some of my friends and experts in the Balance Discord on the monk. And so it's time to talk about all of the monk changes that came with patch 5.4. So with these changes, monk is a job that I'm even more proud to recommend to people looking for a super fast-paced, action-packed class. Will use martial arts to punch and kick their opposition into submission like an MMA rock star. Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, absolutely. So there's going to be a lot of dragon kick, leaden fist boot shines going on here. More on the rotation section on why I'm saying that. But as always, if you want to help support me, I'd super appreciate if you delivered a massive dragon kick to my like button and did a good old cat daddy boot shine to that subscribe button. So let's first of all talk about the changes directly from the patch notes. There are timestamps to skip ahead if you've already seen them and want to get to the rotation section, but for those who haven't or want a quick recap, let's go over it right now. So the Grease Lightning mechanic was a core part of the monk's gameplay, and in order to basically play the monk effectively, you needed to maintain 3 or more stacks in order to get significantly more damage output. This has been completely reworked into traits now, with no more Grease Lightning stack buildup or expenditure through abilities like Tornado Kick in the past. To say the absolute least, this is going to ease a lot of stress off of monks in practically all gameplay scenarios. Long dungeon pulls where you cannot refresh Grease Lightning timers, that's gone. Awkward phase transition times, gone. Trying to build up Grease Lightning before you can really burst up, which could be especially painful on fast dying trash, that's gone too. For me at least, this change looks really appealing because one of the things that really bummed me out was the build-up time of monk in something like expert roulette, where a tank might be pulling a little bit slower, my stacks would fall off, but by the time that I got them up, the trash was basically already dead. So now let's talk about potency changes briefly. I'm going to leave the exact details to the patch notes rather than just read through them ability by ability. Overall, the net effect was to shift the power into abilities and out of the prior Grease Lightning style of the monk. Perfect Balance got some changes, giving you 6 stacks using whatever ability you want regardless of form. This is going to be very important ability, especially in our opener. Form Shift acts like a mini Perfect Balance, letting you execute a single weapon skill without being in its form. Since its cooldown is literally on the global cooldown, you can also read that as 2 seconds or less. This means that Perfect Balance on its 90-second cooldown timer is going to be much more easy to use Form Shift, whereas Perfect Balance you're going to want to save for really big burst scenarios like your opener. However, I would still say that Form Shift is an ability that you should consider if you are in a mechanic or phase of the boss where you can't actively be hitting the boss, and it would be useful to do this alongside meditation stacks as always. A very small but very significant quality of life improvement also happened, speaking of meditation, where meditation used to have a 1.2 second recast time, now it's down to 1 second, taking a little bit of that preparation time necessary to get your stacks up off. Is it a ton? No, but I definitely see this making it a lot easier to stack up in a fight. Tornado Kick has been reworked and nerfed a decent bit. Now without the Grease Lightning stacks as a requirement, this ability has had its potency lowered by 30 and cooldown extended from 10 to 45 seconds. So that is a pretty significant nerf in terms of numbers, but I don't think an unwarranted one now that you don't need to expend Grease Lightning stacks. Now one of my favorite changes is honestly monk positionals through the Riddle of Earth talent. Because honestly, I'm going to be quite blunt, monk positionals still challenge me and I do need a bit more practice with it. Now it essentially acts like a melee DPS role action called True North that will let you ignore positional requirements for a set period of time. Likewise, for most people who are familiar with it, that means that that's also going to add a lot of potency where you can just stand behind the boss and not worry about needing to weave to their sides. This, however, is going to come on a unique 3 charges maximum and also reduces damage taken during the time and refills 1 charge every 30 seconds. To say the least, I am a very big fan of this change, and it not only lets you take less damage during a heavy damage period, but also to be able to position in the fight wherever you need to go to say stack with priority with no regrets, such as if the party is stacking behind the boss, but you need to use your flank for your combo. Well, not only are you going to be able to position now without losing that, but you're also going to take less damage. Now the Brotherhood buff has been supercharged to now buff all allies damage, but with the slight nerf that it is only a 20% chance to open a chakra rather than 30%. However, undeniably this is going to go a great way to making sure that regardless of composition, that your team does well with the buff. Every team composition now these days has 2 healers that only do magic damage so far in this game, and then at least 1 caster is pretty much expected as the standard. So that's at least 3 people now being impacted by this buff, and I'm a fan. The trait Deep Meditation lets you open a chakra every single time you are critically striking. So Critical Strike, which has always been pretty appealing for DPS classes, is only honestly become even more appealing to feed sweet chakra into those explosive enlightenment or forbidden chakra spenders for that very big burst potential. Next up, Anatman has been reworked to extend the duration of the Twin Snakes debuff when you use Anatman to 30 seconds. For those who aren't super familiar with Twin Snakes, this is going to be the personal buff that increases your damage by 10% for 15 seconds by default using the Twin Snakes ability in Raptor form. Anatman being on a 60-second cooldown means that you get to juggle this buff a lot longer and hence use Twin Snakes less and less, and yet you use other abilities like True Strike for more potency. Or maybe go into Perfect Balance and do some crazy things like we'll talk in the rotation. The last patch notes change is to Six-Sided Star, and this ability will now give you a movement speed boost for 5 seconds, which honestly I think is really cool because this will let you reposition yourself quite effectively during a mechanic heavy phase of the boss. So as a quick recap of the patch notes, Grease Lightning has been reworked into traits, potency of old abilities has been reworked as a part of that, increasing the ability damage for the most part. Old abilities have been given new effects like Anatman to extend our Twin Snakes duration, Six-Sided Star gives a speed boost, and Riddle of Earth acts like 3 extra charges of True North, and now Brotherhood buffs even casters. One thing unfortunately not mentioned in the patch notes that was caught by the monk experts is that auto attack damage was lowered in the process of the nerfs unfortunately, although hopefully when numbers from the raids actually come out, it's not too significant of a hit. Moving on to patch notes, now let's get into some of the nitty-gritty details. Consulting some of the experts from the Balance Discord and friends, let's talk about how these changes actually are going to come into play. Right now, the estimation is that with best in slot gear to focus in on Critical Strike, and ultimately we are going to end up with about a 1.96 to 1.97 second global cooldown. So it's only going to be a teeny tiny bit lower than the baseline 2-second global cooldown with the Monk after all the traits. Again, no Grease Lightning stacks need apply. However, the Balance Discord has tested excessive skill speed and that we can arrive around a 1.75 second global cooldown with an absolutely ridiculous 3.4k skill speed stat. If that ever does become best in slot, we will see, but for now the current theory and speculation is leaning towards not going hard on the skill speed, but instead more towards crit, likewise filling the gaps with determination and direct hit as necessary as the gear basically allows. The opener that is currently being proposed by the Balance Discord and Monk experts is that pre-pull we are going to set ourselves on Fists of Fire and basically stay there the entire fight. Instead of say going Fists of Wind for a 4th Grease Lightning stack, that playstyle is gone as of right now. But before we even hit the boss, we should also be using Form Shift, which has a 15-second duration on the buff, as well as 5 stacks of chakra should be prepared just before the pull using Meditation. Likewise, this means during raid you might want to ask your tank for a 15-minute cooldown timer to let you know, hey, I'm going to be pulling in 15 seconds from now. That will go a long way to making this a lot more manageable. When the pull timer hits 0, we immediately go in with Shoulder Tackle into Dragon Kick. Why Dragon Kick is because we will start off our rotation and give us Leaden Fist buff that makes Boot Shine that we will cast later hit like an absolute truck. And for the record, Boot Shine will always crit from behind, and so that translates into 370 potency at a guaranteed crit. That's gonna hurt a lot. And hence why I said Dragon's Shining Boots at the start of this video is gonna be a very big theme. A fair question is why Form Shift pre-pull though, because we could technically cast Dragon Kick at the start. This is done because we do not get Leaden Fist buff if we do not enter that using Oppo form. Form Shift lets us skip this requirement and we get Leaden Fist without a problem. And with the way potions have that lovely little delay that makes it super easy to weave in a single potion between these two abilities on that off global cooldown space. This goes into immediately using the second ability Twin Snakes to get the 10% damage buff to self, which then goes immediately into popping our burst cooldown Riddle of Fire for a grand total of 35% more damage between it and Twin Snakes. We then slam down our Demolish ability, applying our damage over time effect, buffed up to 35% with these two abilities. This leads into a sync weave of the Forbidden Chakra off of the global cooldown. This then starts us off on our baseline rotation in Boot Shine. And again, you're going to notice what I said before is that there's going to be a lot of dragon kicks into Boot Shine. Then we pop our big cooldown of Perfect Balance, granting us 6 free ability uses without needing to be in the proper form. We then go into Dragon Kick again, and then with Perfect Balance, we get that Leaden Fist buff. We then single weave in Brotherhood for even more damage buffs to our team, and likewise I'm showing an infographic from the Summoner Discord that I got a little while ago, which is showing you how all of the team buffs are going to stack up and likewise add up to a massive burst when all combined together at the right time. But Brotherhood you use here. From there we go into Boot Shine for a massive 370 guaranteed crit from behind the target. We then single weave in Elixir Field for even more added damage. We then go into Dragon Kick for, as you guessed it, Leaden Fist buff. We then use Tornado Kick off of the global cooldown. We then blow that stack of Leaden Fist into Boot Shine for even more damage. We then weave in a charge of Shoulder Tackle just to make sure that we don't overcap on charges, just because it does add some potency. And then you guessed it, Dragon Kick for Leaden Fist. Then Boot Shine. And from here, we then use Dragon Kick once more, and we have ended our phase of Perfect Balance, and this leads us into Twin Fists and then Demolish, allowing us to refresh our Twin Snake self buff and damage over time effect on the target. So with the opener out of the way, let's talk briefly about mid-rotation concerns. Overall, the opener, your big bursts are going to come in 90-second intervals, because you're going to combine Riddle of Fire, that 25% self buff, alongside Perfect Balance, which lets you use those 6 abilities, which is going to be Dragon Kick, Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, and then continue. And you want to use those together every 90 seconds. And then this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, because the monk's off global cooldown space is really short, because right now global cooldown of monk is 2 seconds, and so you might need to keep a good eye on these 2 buffs between Riddle of Fire and Perfect Balance, making sure that you don't have too much off global cooldown drift between them. But essentially you get 6 total abilities to cast freely with Perfect Form, and so comboing it with Riddle of Fire is going to be a lot of damage. But one thing I would be remiss to mention is that we will have the ability Anatman that will allow us to do some minor micromanagement of our rotation, where we can skip using Twin Snakes and instead can opt for a higher potency ability like True Strike, or alternatively to extend the time of the buff when we're kept away from the boss, such as during a mechanic heavy phase where there's a lot of orange markers, and you know the drill, when we need to run away and not hit the boss, it sucks, but life. Other skills to consider to use when you're away from the boss include spamming Meditation for more chakra stacks, or Form Shift to allow you to cheese out Dragon Kick Boot Shine. Because honest to goodness, Dragon's Shining Boots is the entire bulk of the major payoffs in this rotation right now. And so Dragon's Shining Boots needs to become a meme. I'm relying on you guys. So this brings us to kind of like the conclusion of the video, which a lot of people have asked me what are my thoughts on the monk, and honestly I've always thought the monk was one of the fastest paced, most engaging jobs that we have in Final Fantasy XIV, and that hasn't changed one bit. With a super low baseline global cooldown of 2 seconds alongside an absolute truckload of off global cooldown abilities and so many different abilities to use, as well as a rotation that is literally I don't want to say disjoint, but you have so many options with the rotation. It's not just 1, 2, 3, it's all over the place. It's really malleable. I think that this job still will absolutely keep the fiercest anti-GCD players happy. In fact, I think maybe even more so at this point. But now the monk has so much more room to breathe and utility to help himself survive and move through mechanics such as Fist of Wind and Six-Sided Star provide 2 very powerful ways to get insane mobility alongside the baseline dash with 2 charges, making monk able to easily pass through the field. Abilities like Fist of Earth, Mantra, and Riddle of Earth lets the monk easily shrug off damage and ease pressure off of healers. And now with the rework to Brotherhood even impacting magical casters and healers, Monk's party contribution and total raid DPS through that ability alone has gone up. The rework likewise to Grease Lightning undeniably, probably I should have opened with this in this section. This rework to Grease Lightning has made it so the monk's playstyle has been cleaned up so much. It's so much cleaner, and that those nasty quality of life concerns like how am I gonna keep Grease Lightning stacks going between these dungeon pulls, you're not asking that question anymore. That has gone away. That concern is one for old relics like me who've been playing from a Realm Reborn. You don't need to worry about that. Not to mention, we get essentially 3 more charges of the positional relieving True North ability to Riddle of Earth, making handling monk positionals in tight fights massively easier. That might even be an understatement. So I like the monk even more now, and seeing brilliant additions to the kit's quality of life, utility, mobility, and pretty hilarious Dragon's Shining Boots combo makes the monk a job I'm going to be even more proud to recommend to people looking for a super fast-paced, action-packed job that will use martial arts like Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to bash, kick, and fist their opponent into submission. Anyhow, that is all the monk changes in 5.4, and I hope that this video helped you all out. I apologize that this was so brief, and if you have any questions, probably because this is not like an ultimate guide where I'm gonna go and flesh out every ability, please don't hesitate to ask, and I'm gonna try my best to go in the comment section and help everyone as I see the questions come in. As always, if you want to help support me and my content, I would super appreciate if you delivered a massive dragon kick to that like button and did a good old cat daddy boot shine to that subscribe button. Take care and happy patch 5.4.